You're listening to the Savoir Faire Audio Experience.
Are you ready?
The Savoir Faire Experience is your guide to everything that has to do with lifestyle. From dating, rides, style, and entertainment. All brought to you by the editor of Savoir Faire magazine, Robert White. Anything goes on this audio experience. So, let's go.
It's still the best.
All right, guys, welcome to another episode of the Savoir Faire Audio Experience. Thank you guys for listening, following, and being a part of our show. We appreciate you. Another great interview coming to you today. And I just want to give you a little bit of context of what we're going to talk about today, because this is super interesting. The gentleman we're going to talk to today owns a general contracting company, but he's got layers and layers and layers to his business. And that's one of the cool things about it, and one of the reasons why I wanted to talk today with Clark Lowe. How you doing, Clark?
Hey, how are you? It's so great to be on the cast.
Yeah, I really appreciate you finding some time to chit-chat with me. We're going to definitely dive into a lot of cool things today. Obviously, you've been the CEO of O'Connor's company for a long time. You guys are general contracting as a general topic, but ideally do a lot of really cool pieces in that industry. So I'm excited to learn about the company, obviously you, and then just kind of pick your brain on some stuff that, maybe just CEOs kind of know about. And so the way I want to start this interview with you is just build some structure and a little bit of a timeline. I like to do this with all CEOs and company owners that I meet. So I'm going to ask you kind of a real simple question, and we'll see how divey we can get here. If I had your resume in front of me, Clark, what would I learn about you?
The big thing I think you'd learn about me is a pretty complex journey. Started off, obviously young kid, grew up in Kansas, and then into, right after 9/11 into the Marine Corps for 9 years, and then bounced around the corporate world a bit. And then ultimately kind of got into construction. Thought that was the thing that I seemed to be naturally good at. Then, pursued, growing my positions within construction, overseeing different types of projects on all sides. I've sat on all sides of the table from a construction perspective, and then got to a point where it's like, hey, I want to try to go do this on my own. So, found a business partner, got some investors, and then went and bought a construction company and based in Pinehurst, North Carolina. So that's the 3-minute version of my resume.
I love the 3-minute version. That's awesome. Well, it's very cool. I mean, I love the little bit of tidbits that you gave us. So first off, thank you so much for your service. Love that you served in the Marines. It's a super cool kind of opportunity, obviously, and the structure and the things that you learned from being a Marine obviously is going to lead into you being a really strong CEO and owner of a company. I picked up on something there where you said you went out and bought a construction company, but you also said some stuff about kind of starting construction. So when did construction become a part of your world? Were you a Legos kid when you were younger? Take me back here a little bit.
Yeah. So my dad, when I grew up, my dad was a carpenter, and he owned a small construction business, kind of home renovation business. So many of my summers when I wasn't playing baseball was spent either roofing or doing small types of construction with my dad. And then I kind of fell back into it on accident when I worked at Cardinal Health. I was a facility manager there, and we had a large Lean Six Sigma project that kind of reoriented the whole distribution center. And I was the lead on that project from, at the distribution center. And that was my first big construction project and, dive into project management. And it went really well. Luckily it went really well. And it seemed to be something that I was very interested in, and, got great feedback from the teams. And it naturally, it's I didn't have to put a ton of energy into it, and it seemed to go okay. So I was like, hey, this construction stuff seems to be something I'm naturally good at. So then I just started pursuing that construction. So I kind of fell in love with it, got a passion for construction, and went from there.
Okay. So you were kind of doing some word of mouth kind of projects in the very beginning of your career. Is that kind of how it worked?
No. So when I got out of the Marine Corps, I actually went and worked for Target. I was an executive team leader at Target on the store side for logistics. Then I went to Gap, and then at Cardinal Health, once I got there, I did that construction project, and then I, worked for a couple real estate development firms as like a director of operations, working on all kinds of, tenant fit out construction projects there. And then I finally got into buying my own company. So that's like, I didn't really didn't do a lot of small jobs. I kind of always just was in commercial industrial construction from the start.
Okay, got it. So when you're shopping around for a company that you want to buy, what was the decision making of like, why not start one from scratch? Why did you want to buy one that was kind of preset?
Well, I mean, if you think about your own home renovation, right? Do you want a general contractor working on your house circa 2025? So a big piece of construction is, having a legacy and having a platform that's already built, just from an experience perspective. Now, could I have built it? I could have likely built it, but it would just take much longer to build and scale, because one of the things that a lot of people look for in construction is experience, right? You don't want, no one wants their house to be the first house to work on, or the first commercial project. It just like, there's too much going against you and trying to do that. So that's why we went out, we bought a company that has a history that reaches back into the 70s. So that we could have like that foundation. And once we got the company, then we were able to, really explode the revenues and, drive the top line over the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, that's super cool. So talk to me a little bit about that too. We're going to go down a little rabbit hole because I love learning from business guys too. So you bought the company, kicked things off. There's obviously a specific revenue stream that the business was already bringing in. That's what makes it, available to be purchased or makes you interested in purchasing something like that. How did you scale it? Talk to me about just kind of some internal growth ideas you had.
Yeah, one of my favorite quotes is the path to all victory is organization of the non-obvious. And I think that's probably what a lot of people get wrong with growth. Growing is, to me, it's always been a simple thing. It's just solve the problem in front of you. And when I talk to a lot of business owners and small business owners, what I tend to see, just as like a general trend, is people try to solve problems, all the problems before they start. And, when you actually really dissect, very high level lives, whether it's Elon Musk or Steve Jobs, Jack Welch, what you really start to identify is these guys aren't like really like super geniuses from a sense. They're just really good at solving only the problem in front of them. And that's what I've really started to learn to do, is instead of trying to solve all the problems in front of me, just solve the most immediate one. Because sometimes after you solve the first problem, the second and third problems, they weren't even problems to begin with. So, when it comes to scaling the business, I really tell people and really focus on the immediate thing in front of you. Don't try to solve everything.
Yeah, I like that thought process. It makes a lot of sense. And it does simplify the role of a business owner, obviously, to be able to have an established business like you have done, and then be able to just solve problems. Do you feel like the growth or the natural kind of growth of a company as far as revenue, projects, expansion, whatever, that all kind of comes naturally once you start kind of solving the problems? Do you feel like that's just a part of it?
Yeah, I think you have, another one of my favorite quotes is begin with the end in mind. You have to make a process that you can replicate very well and easily. And I think that's the other, crux of, business owners as they're trying to grow their business, is the business initially starts with them. And then now you need to become a leader and you need to like replicate yourself so you can multiply the business. Right. And so everything we do at O'Connor is this idea of like, how do we replicate it? Like we're a general contractor with like almost 90% of our people are remote work. So like we're really working on, from like a culture and leadership perspective, is how do we continue to replicate this? You have Uber, who just RTO return to office, their entire staff. SpaceX has done it. Nearly all of Silicon Valley, JP Morgan just did it. So you have all these companies that are returning to office, and we're kind of in the headwinds here, going the opposite way, saying we're leaning into remote work. And it's very rare for our industry to do that.
Yeah, I would say that is really rare, which is super cool. So there's something probably there to be learned and to study for other people that are kind of listening, especially in the general contracting industry, because I feel like that's got to be like a in office kind of position all the time. But how does that work? I mean, you have different teams all over the country now, right? You guys are really expanding that.
Correct. Yeah. So all of our support staff are, based. We got people from Phoenix up to like Minnesota, over to New York, down to I don't think we have anybody in Florida, but down to North Carolina. We have people that represent about 16 or 17 states as far as employees in varying positions. And yeah, it's just really about realigning the work realigning your positions of work so that remote work can work. And I think that's the big thing that's been missing in the construction industry, because you do have to do a lot of positional realignment.
Yeah, that's super cool. I love that that idea of it too. I'm going to give a little highlight to the company because I was looking at the website today before you and I connected, and I saw kind of right on the homepage that was broken down into kind of three different divisions in a way. So there's general contracting, which most of us know what that is. And there's management for those projects, and there's consulting for those projects. And I thought that was kind of cool that you broke it down into three separate kind of things that really you kind of would hire one person to come in and do all of them. But you guys are really opening the door to like a lot of opportunity, and probably a little bit more of like availability and budgeting too for people that want to utilize the company. So talk to me a little bit about that division between those things. I mean, why are they kind of separate? Are you guys seeing something different in the industry that most people don't see, to have them to be a consulting and management company and not just be the contractors doing everything?
Yeah. So, I mean, really it's one spills into the other. I think most of your mid-tier large general contractors all kind of offer construction management, which the difference between being a general contractor and a construction manager is typically when you're a construction manager, you're a representative of the owner. So you're essentially the expertise, the owner, and then typically you'll help go out and find a general contractor to support a job. So you're using your expertise just in a different role to bridge the gap. Construction consulting, that could be, hey, we've run into like a problem we don't really understand how to solve. It could be small businesses wanting to reach out and say, hey, how to help me understand how you guys, how can we replicate what you guys have done as far as multiplying your revenue or breaking into new markets, et cetera. So we offer those types of services as well. So that's really the difference. And it's just really taking your expertise and in the same field and offering it in different ways.
Yeah, I like that because I feel like maybe I have some construction knowledge potentially for a project that I want to do, but I just need kind of the extra brain power, second eyes, that kind of concept. So I think it's super cool that you guys offer this kind of either management or consulting kind of perspective as well, because I can just see you guys getting the opportunity to work with a lot of projects just based on being consultants and not actually putting, the shovel in the dirt kind of concept in this industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And it gives us and it also helps us learn because you get to see projects from a different perspective, which is really important. Sometimes if you're always just on the general contracting side, sometimes you get unempathetic to the problems that are on other sides of construction. So when we open up into those other arms, it really helps us maintain some, varied and different perspective, which helps us keep new ideas fresh and deliver on projects for our owners, sometimes like different ways.
Yeah, I like that very much. That's very cool. Well, I want to pick your brain a little bit because it's always good to have a CEO of a company like this kind of involved with the podcast and be able to talk to you a little bit about business stuff and structure and things like that. So you guys are really kind of, you said going against the grain, not really doing a lot of in-office stuff, but really allowing your employees to kind of be all over the country and expand, which is very cool. And I love that. But like, how do you build a workplace kind of culture when you have your team kind of spread all over the place at this point?
Yeah. So one of the things I talk to my team about very deeply, almost, weekly, is this idea of removing the thought of managing people. So what I always say is we manage processes and lead people. And when you, at a traditional workplace where people are in an office, you have this social the social psychology dynamic of, whether it's like groupthink and group behavior, you can kind of create that to help drive a workforce forward. But now with remote work, it really taxes your leadership skills, and it taxes the leadership teams in very different ways. So you still need to be able to provide a culture where everybody can feel the culture and they can move forward in the same direction. But you have to do it in a way where you don't have this idea of collective behavior. And that's really hard to do and replicate. And I think that's why a lot of these larger companies are starting to return to office, because they just have a hard time doing that. And one of the questions, I always ask is, are we in the new era? Are we now outside of kind of the Peter Drucker, Dale Carnegie foundation of management and leadership? And are we into like a new era with the advent of AI, all the new technology that we have? I feel like the pendulum is starting to swing back and say, hey, some of these problems with large organizations is back to being just raw leadership talent problems.
Okay, very cool. No, I like that. I like that you're kind of forward thinking and thinking about the future and how these businesses are kind of structured and how this stuff works. I know a lot of like big corporate companies obviously are like, return to office because we want to build a culture within a specific building, workspace, whatever that may be. So having so many like mobile employees, which is very unique. I like the concept, obviously. I think we learned a ton of it from COVID. So many businesses were like in this position where if we want to keep moving forward, we have to adapt and modify a business. And then when COVID kind of loosened up or things changed, people started coming back to office. And it's cool that you kind of have thought about this route in a different perspective. What kind of things do you like? I'm trying to think of cultural kind of things. Like, what kind of things are you doing during the week when you're having these meetings or conversations to kind of bring people together? I mean, is there a consistent is there a 1 week group meeting where they're all getting together on a Zoom meeting with you? Are they engaging with each other and you're seeing consistent feedback from groups that are getting together? Like, talk to me a little bit about some of the structure piece of that.
Yeah. So what a lot of this is I really drive through our executive team, how, what this idea of like managed processes and lead people looks like. And another thing we do is every month I send a CEO update out to the whole team, everyone internally, and I really talk about different aspects of this. So I review, month results, so the whole company knows where we're at month to month. I highlight areas that we need to focus on, and then I talk about, some of this leadership perspective. And so that's one avenue, the video being another avenue. But I think it's really important to lead from the top down. So it's really getting the executive team on board. So a lot of my time is spent with them and ensuring that like my vision of what an O'Connor culture looks like is kind of percolating down. And that, to me, that's the important aspect. So, and we have like a very interesting new leadership development program. So we went out and hired a leadership consulting firm, and we're doing something that I don't think anyone else anywhere is doing. And one of the things that we're doing is creating all these like micro moments of like leadership. So instead of leadership being a book or like an 8-hour, class where everybody gets together and you do trust falls, we've turned this into 3 times a week. We send out some type of product. Sometimes we send it in the mail. Sometimes we send it on the via text message. Sometimes we send it via email or Teams. But it's essentially just like this, very small transaction, almost like an ad or a storyboard or something that you'd see on Pinterest or Instagram. And so we're really trying to tailor how we're positioning like growth and development to be digestible, similar to how people are spending their time on TikTok, Instagram, et cetera. So we've really taken to that, and we were like developing our own leadership and development program here.
Oh, that's really cool and interesting. Yeah, I've never heard of that before, like especially within your industry. So I think that's a really kind of standout thing. I mean, I really kind of dig that. I had this kind of off the wall question, but I'm just kind of curious because obviously you're the CEO of a pretty decent sized company here. When you have a kind of business set up the way you do, right? And let's assume that there's a lot of people that are networking, connecting. They kind of become family within the O'Connor company. You're starting to connect with people. when there's a change, for example, like someone gets laid off or there's some kind of massive things that happen. And this is kind of structured. This question is kind of structured from something I'm seeing personal. I happen to be in a town where corporate business lays people off all the time. And so I'm kind of curious about that from your perspective. Like, how do you kind of keep the team together? Because I know, like, even in smaller jobs that I've had in my past before I was self-employed, when like the key person that held the group together is let go for whatever reason, it changes completely changes the dynamic of the workspace for sure. So in your position, kind of having everyone kind of mobile, but still networking, connecting, and building culture, how do you kind of see that changing stuff? Do you kind of have to pre-warn people, kind of be more clear about the reasons why someone was let go so people understand? Like, how does that work within your culture?
Yeah. So, well, our company, and fortunately, knock on wood, like our retention rates are well over 90%. Last year, we had 100% retention in the company. This year, we've lost one person who elected to leave. So really, there's a lot of protection around the culture. I love the idea of hire fast, fire faster. Sometimes, we just had a gentleman we took on board, and within like the first 30 days, we could tell like he just wasn't going to work out. So we just, we separated ways on that. So it's like if you protect the culture, and we do it with actions, not words. So one of the things I always talk about is when you come work at O'Connor, it's truly like the open range. We don't have a bunch of policies that pigeonhole people, like all that, like having the bumpers down the gutters on the bowling alley. So no matter what ball you throw down, it kind of makes its way to the pins. What we do is we have like our bowling alleys a mile wide or 2 miles wide. And what I can do as a CEO is I can step back and kind of watch the herd and see like who's at least tracking towards the point on the horizon. Even if everybody's not going in the same direction, generally everybody's moving forward, in the same direction. And then the people who aren't, the stray cattle that are just off, at that point, we don't even send the cowboys to go wrangle them in. We just separate because we can tell they're not part of company culture. So that's how we think about culture. And then one of the things I think a lot of people get wrong with remote work is they tend to put in more bumpers. What ends up happening is you really start to replicate mediocrity because you have, it's like, okay, I have this process where I do a verbal coaching and then I do a written coaching and another written coaching and then a personal improvement plan. And all that does is create these guardrails and bumpers that allow you to keep around, like whether it's a toxic employee or a very poor performer, you just keep them around for a long time. So we just remove all those bumpers. We have we call open PTO, which is essentially unlimited PTO. So we really, as people move throughout the year and as they work with O'Connor, we really get to see their true colors because there's no guardrails, there's no bumpers for us to keep everybody in line. You're either kind of moving in the right direction or you're not a part of O'Connor.
I love that, man. I think that's a great answer, honestly, because I love to hear like a standard perspective from a CEO, like this is how we roll. And I like the idea that you don't have the bumpers. You're allowing people to kind of like decide for themselves if this is something for them or not. But I like that you talked a little bit about kind of the person that kind of goes off and does their own thing. Like clearly that's not going to be on mission, not on par. And that person doesn't need to stay. So it makes sense to have that. Your retention is incredible, by the way, like 100% and then going to 90% is great. I mean, how big is the staff are we talking here?
We just grew over 60.
Wow.
So by the end of this year, we'll probably be somewhere in the range of 70, 75, and then going into next year, we'll clear 100. We'll be over 100 next year.
Yeah, which is part of the expansion process for you too, which is really great. No, I think that's great, man. It's good to hear some of that stuff too, because I think some people are so worried about layoffs and job security these days. It's just a whole world of stuff happening. So it's good to find out that like there's a good structure, that, everyone's kind of equal in the company, in the idea that like, if you stray off, then we're just going to let you stray off. Like you're just going to disappear. I think that's really kind of unique, a way to kind of run a company. I've definitely seen some structures that weren't really on par like that. And I like the idea of that. It's something I actually want to share with other business owners that I I know for sure, be like, you should listen to this podcast episode that I had with Clark and listen to what he said at the end, because that's one of those key tidbits that really kind of hits home for a lot of people, I think. It's a really great structure.
Yeah, and sometimes when it comes to remote work and when it comes to people, the last 20 years we're so used to solving problems with a new technology or a new widget. It's just kind of how everything has been, right? If you have a gap in something, it's like, okay, well, we'll get an app, or we'll get something in the cloud or a website or something will help us with that. And I think we're at a point now where we have all those, all those mousetraps figured out. And it's really down to now like raw leadership power. And that is the most important thing of any organization, is how is the executive team growing, especially how is the CEO growing from a leadership perspective. Are they reading? Are they, are voracious readers? Are they studying deep in leadership? Because there's a lot changing right now, as there always is, but especially right now, there's a lot changing on the people side.
Yeah, no, I like that too. There was another thing that I was curious about too, and I think this is part of my own perspective and as a business owner myself and trying to just understand some of this stuff. Let's assume that you found a really great employee and they came in and they're a general contractor for you, and you've just, from your position, you've seen them kind of working and have some knowledge about other things besides general contact. And maybe they're just like really good people and they have really good consulting kind of aspects. Would you reach out to random John Doe and say, hey, I think you'd be better fit here, and let's kind of put you in a position where your assets are stronger? Or do you kind of let people stay where they are? Like, from your perspective, I'm kind of curious about that too, because I try to figure out like this new modern thing that I've heard about where, we interview people and we learn about their strengths, and then we create positions within our company that lead to the strengths, instead of trying to put someone in a box where this is the position and this is what we need you to do. So from a perspective of your perspective with growth, are you seeing people that have like specific skills and moving them from your perspective?
Yeah, that's it. And that's precisely my philosophy. We don't hire experience. We hire what people innately have for intangible assets. So what we hire for is like intellectual curiosity. Self-regulation is a big one. Trust, we hire those who seem to be entrepreneurial in spirit. And we really focus on those intangible skills that people have that I can't train, versus what does someone's experience look like. So I'll take someone that has an abundance of skills over experience all day long. And because we can always teach people the experience, but it's really hard to teach people work ethic or teach people to be intellectually curious or to be dedicated to their job or have a drive for excellence. Those are very hard things to teach, because, mom and dad should be doing that when you're growing up. And, that's a whole nother podcast to talk about,
Yeah.
where the responsibility of human development has started to fall, right? It seems like now schools, like K through 12 schools, are, working on like the emotional regulation. And then as we get into the workplace, college is supposed to be preparing people for work, but, it's now more and more, these kids come into the job sector and they have no experience because they've never had a job. So you have an entry level employee who they don't show up on time, or they're not dressed correctly, or they just don't have tact and common business protocol. So you're having to teach that, which can be like very frustrating for people. It's very disruptive. It can be very disruptive to culture. So those are all things that we're, on top of, consistently.
Yeah, I love that. I love every bit of this, Clark. I really appreciate you finding time to chat with me today and talk a little bit about some of this stuff. I mean, not only as a CEO with some knowledge and some great perspective, but obviously a little bit of kind of plug for the O'Connor Company, which sounds like you guys are doing everything correctly. I love that you kind of have this really kind of human touch and old-fashioned kind of style of management there, and people are kind of welcomed in, and you're allowing people to kind of make their choice if they want to be with the company or not, and then, which is very cool. And And the idea that you're not putting people in structure. I mean, it sounds like, you easily could come there and be a laborer and then have your skills recognized and be able to move up to management within a short amount of time. I mean, that's a really great structure that you guys have created. So I appreciate you finding time to talk to me. And I'm really glad that we were able to kind of highlight O'Connor Company and some of your knowledge today.
Absolutely. Pleased to be here. And we don't have everything figured out. We're still learning as we go. So I don't want to paint that picture. We definitely learn something every day. And I think we got miles of road in front of us to figure things out. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think you're on the right track, though. I mean, I have to give you the applause there for sure. So I appreciate it.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the show. Please take a minute to head over to www.savfair.com and subscribe to our publication.